Let's look a little bit more at news writing. Before that, I wanted to show you a cartoon I like. It shows the difference between feature writing and news writing, or really what people think the difference between those two types of writing are. Feature writing, you have a little bit more flexibility with your descriptions because of the nature of the story, whereas in news writing, we just get to the point. So anyway, it's a little bit exaggerated, but I thought I would show you that. So we're going to look at 6 guidelines for writing straight news leads. So a straight news lead is the top of an inverted pyramid story. You want to ask yourself 2 questions when you start. What happened? So what if you were going to tell me what happened, what would you say? If you were going to text me what happened, that chances are that's going to be what you would actually say in your lead. You might clean it up a little bit, but what you would text your friend when you tell me what happened is going to be what's going to be in your lead. And then again, why does it matter? So knowing news values, knowing your audience, knowing why this might be important to your audience is going to determine what information often that you put at the top of your story. So let's look at the first one, and this is a little review of what we talked about before. So our lead is 1 paragraph. That's your first paragraph of your story. It's 1 sentence and 30 to 35 words max. Now, your book is going to tell you to write a shorter lead, but for our purposes, we're going to go ahead and say 30 to 35 words. And what we want to do, our goal is to answer these questions: who, what, when, where, and why and how. That's what we're going to do for our story. And so this is a really short lead. We need some more information in here, but this is the basic story. Fire destroyed a house on Main Street early Monday. Now, you can think about your who's in your story. Who is your who? Your who can be a person, but it can also be a thing. And sometimes whatever caused the problem or started the situation or created the event is really a good who to start your story with. And you want a strong verb. So destroyed is what happened. If I went to the house, I wouldn't see the house anymore. That's what happened to it. Where is it and when did it happen? Now, we don't have the why and the how. We know that fire destroyed a house, but how did the fire start? So we'll get to that in just a minute. So your lead's first verb is the what. That you want to be able to say that right at the front of your story, among the first 7 words. So your verb is always going to be the heavy lifter in your sentence. It's going to be what drives your sentence. You want to pick the most accurate and the strongest verb that you can for what happened. And so you want to put that close to the who. And those two go together. You don't need commas between them or anything like that. They go one after the other. Who did what? Your subject and your verb. And if you have a direct object, which is house received the action. Fire destroyed a house. That's the way you want to go. That's the way you want to start. Now, you want to write an active voice. So we've already covered that before, but let's review that a little bit just in case you're rusty on it. So active voice means that the doer is going to go before the verb. Fire destroyed a Main Street home early Monday. So your verb is destroyed. Your doer, fire, comes first. That's the easiest way for you to be able to understand and use active voice. Where's your doer in relation to the verb? Now this would be passive voice. We can actually give you the same information, but move some things around, and it's in passive voice. A Main Street home was destroyed by fire early Monday. Now this is not grammatically incorrect. There's really nothing wrong with this. It's just not the most powerful way that you can say it. Look at the verb, was destroyed. So remember, in passive voice, I'm typically going to have a helper verb. Now, just because you see a helper verb doesn't mean it's passive voice, but that's one element of it. And then my doer comes after the verb. So I have to get almost to the end of the sentence to find out who did the thing. And that's why it slows your audience down. So you don't want to do this. I wanted to show you so you can see the difference. But if you want to do subject, verb, direct object, you'll get it every time. No problem at all. Now, if there's a who, a person who, then we should know who the person is. And that's important because people are the most important elements of our story. What happens to people? So now our story's changed a little bit because we know that a person was killed in here. So an elderly Baton Rouge man died Monday when an early morning fire raged through his Main Street home. So now we know that a person is involved, and we don't want to bury that later on in the story. So now the story has become about him. And if you write for a news organization, you're going to do story updates that are going to look like what I just showed you. Maybe you knew there was a fire, but that's all you knew. Then when the fire department started to look into it, they found out there was a person in the house. And so we still have active voice, right? We don't like that verb died. Nobody likes that, but that's actually the most accurate one there. And so that's what he did and when he did it. Your when comes right after that. And so this type of story is called delayed identification lead. And this is important because your stories probably 6 out of 10 times are going to be delayed identification leads. And that's because we don't put the person's name in the lead. We're going to delay that identification into the second paragraph. And we do this when a person is not well known by the audience. And so if you or I were in a story, chances are it would be a delayed identification lead. There would be some identifier for us, maybe our hometown. If you're a student, maybe your year and major, maybe your job, if it has something to do with where you work or it happened at your workplace, could be that as well. And then the name is in the second paragraph. If it's a person the audience knows or should know, public figure, the governor, the mayor of the city, the president, a celebrity that most people probably would know, Beyonce or Jack Black, the actor, maybe that would be in the lead. And then we would continue on with the story. So here's what that would look like. So here's our lead in second paragraph when we have a delayed versus immediate ID. And I'll show you a little bit more examples too, right? So an elderly Baton Rouge man died Monday when an early morning fire sparked by faulty wiring raged through his Main Street home. Jack Spratt, 89, was sleeping upstairs when the fire began shortly after midnight. Fire Chief Georgie Porgy said the fire started near a frayed wire that connected the air conditioning unit to the outlet in Spratt's kitchen. So I have my lead, and then I have my second paragraph. Now notice how we did the age. Remember, we've talked about that. For web and print writing, this is the best way to put a person's age. And I tell you a little bit more about where he was. And now I can hear from the fire chief to find out a little bit more about what happened. So the second paragraph is going to identify our person and also build on the information that we had before. Okay, so let's look at delayed and immediate ID leads a little bit more because this is a real important technique that you need to know for storytelling. And this works across platforms. If you're telling a story in print, on the web, in broadcast audio, you can apply this technique to your storytelling. So delayed ID is when the audience doesn't know the subject, right? Instead, we're going to use an identifier to name the person in the lead. So a Baton Rouge man took a chance and won a $2 million check when he named all numbers in the state's lottery contest, right? So we don't have his name because chances are the larger audience is not going to know the guy, right? And so in second paragraph, we are going to immediately name our person. If you're in broadcast, your second sentence is going to immediately name the person because your audience wants to know who the person is. What is that person's name, right? So Sam Smith, 21, said he buys a ticket once a week at his neighborhood convenience store. only allowing himself to spend $5 maximum on his hobby. So we have his name and age. Ages are good identifiers. We'll talk about when that's appropriate, when it's not in a story. Usually if there's a death or an accident or an arrest, you're going to have a person's age. Sometimes you have them in other stories. It really depends on the topic. But this tells me his name. It also tells me a little bit more about the information, what the circumstances were of him purchasing that ticket. So immediate ID is when the subject is well known. That's a public figure, a public official. Now, the why and the how are the interesting parts of the story. And often you're going to introduce the why or the how in your story and then spend some other time in the story explaining a little bit more. So for this story that we have today about the fire, we're going to need to know some more information. But you don't want to skip over this. You want to make sure you address it and then tend to it later. So an elderly Baton Rouge man died early Monday when fire sparked by faulty wiring raged through his Main Street home. So I want you to see that we have our main verb, which is when that happened. He died Monday. And then we have a clause, when fire sparked by faulty wiring. And we have another verb, raged. Now, those verbs are great because they tell us exactly what happened. You could picture a fire that's raging, means it's moving really quickly and it's just gobbling up everything in its path. So those are great verbs. And those are what we want to make sure that we have in our lead. And so the why and the how, again, are the most interesting parts of the story. You want to give us a clue in the first paragraph about what those are in our story. Now, if you sleep the whole week, this week, in every presentation, you need to remember what I'm telling you right now. So the first 8 to 10 words should begin to tell us the story, right? So I could say to you, the Houma City Council voted 8-3 Friday to raise the. That's 10 words. I haven't told you what's happening, right? Started with a who, right? Did what? But what if I decide I'm going to pick another who? Parking tickets in downtown Houma will go up by $10. That's 10 words. And now you really know what the story's about, right? So think about how you start your story. This is going to be very helpful for you as you write. Sometimes you don't like those first 10 words. Back up, pick another who, and start all over again. You'll find often that your second or third try is going to be your favorite here. Okay? So this starts with the wiring, right? We still have our person in the story, but maybe we want to start a different way, and we can do that because if someone's hurt, if someone dies or is hurt, or property is damaged, that's something you don't want to skip over. It's called life, limb, and property. So if someone dies, or perhaps some tragedy happens and everyone's okay, that's important. Number 2 is someone hurt. That's important. Is there property damage? That's important too. So those 3, either a combination or the first, needs to go in your lead. So we can put that even if we don't have his story. Maybe this is a follow-up story about why the fire happened. We had the story about what happened to him, but now we have an update on what started the fire. So faulty wiring sparked the blaze that claimed the life of a Baton Rouge man. So those are my first words. And that attribution, where I got the information, I can put at the end like this. I don't have to start. So if I start, the city's arson investigator concluded Monday, I've just used 6 words and I haven't really told you anything. But I can separate my attribution with a comma from the rest of the sentence and include that there. So attribution gives you credibility. You're not making it up. Your audience knows where it came from, and that's an important part of writing. So let's review lead writing basics. One sentence. your one sentence is one paragraph. I know that's odd. You'll get used to it. You'll be fine with it. 30 to 35 words max. Now, if you have 36 or 37 words, that's okay with me. You don't want 10, and you don't want 15, and you don't want 20. Pack that sentence with as much information as you can fit in it. Use that 8 to 10 word guideline to start with. That's going to help you really front load that with some good info. Don't skimp. Whenever you have time and space, use it all. In broadcast writing, use the time you're given. In print writing, use the word count you're allowed. Use it all. Don't be skimpy. You can't roll them over and save them, so go for it. So no intro phrases or clauses, right? You want to put the where and the when inside the sentence and put the when close to the verb. The when is a problem child, and our textbook talks about this. So the Bebop City Council voted money to raise taxes. So my council voted. And so there's my verb, voted. I'm going to put that time element really close to the verb. That's going to solve your problem. Sometimes if you move it around, what if I say the Bebop City Council voted to raise taxes Monday? Think about that. It sounds like taxes are going to go up Monday, which would freak everyone out who read the story because it's not true. The vote happened Monday, so watch where you put that time element. No semicolons in your lead. It's a cheaty way to make two sentences into one. I'm not going to let you do it. I'm okay if you have a compound sentence, but let's try not to do that either. In most cases, you don't have to. And again, make your first 8 to 10 words count. We should have an idea of what the story is about by reading the first 8 to 10 words. So these are some these are some guidelines for you to help you think about your writing, to help you think about what goes in that lead. Once you write your lead, then your second paragraph is going to have that information that you couldn't fit in the lead. And that's how you're going to start your story. That's really going to give you a jump start into writing a great, solid story.